That would be an excuse.
Right here. Just let me know if I need to move.
Okay, there we go.
All ready? Okay. According to an article from the Smithsonian Magazine, archaeologists have found records of production of beer in Israel from 13,000 years ago. The crazy thing is, it was made, it's been made 13,000 years ago, but a lot of you guys probably don't even know how beer is made. I mean, a lot of people don't. I didn't until recently. And a lot of people, when they see how beer is made, they're in a brewery, and they're looking at all the equipment, and it looks something like this, crazy. No one has any idea what is going on. And it's discouraging. So this PowerPoint is to make the process of beer making a little bit less scary to people, and if you want to try it yourself, then we'll give you a little bit of tool. I mean, you'll have to do some research on your own, but yeah, so let's dive into it. Can you make beer at home? Yeah, you can. These are the points that I'm going to hit on. The tools needed, mashing, fermenting, and bottling. So let's get into that now. Okay, 5 tools. Okay, the first thing we're going to need is a sanitizer. Okay, the biggest thing with brewing or making really anything is to make sure it's clean. The brewing industry is awesome because they developed all these really great cleaners. They have no wash cleaners, so you can put it in your fermenters, inside your boil kettles. All your tools can go into it. You don't even have to rinse it off. It's great. Okay, and we got a quote here, and it's just from a writer from the New York Times who was doing a big article on brewing here. So it just says, proper sanitation, you'll ensure that your beer tastes its best, both right away and for months or years, excuse me. All right, so brewing kettle and heat source. I started out with a turkey deep frying pot. You can get more high-end kettles like this guy right here, which have like a thermometer and a dump port on it. You can start out with something like even just your biggest stock pot you have inside your kitchen. Okay. This is a siphon and tubing. This is going to be for getting your beer from your kettle into your fermenter. Okay, we have our fermenter itself. You can do something like a food grade bucket or into a glass carboy like what we have right there. Okay, this is an airlock. This has to do with fermenting. We're going to get into this later, but essentially this just keeps your beer clean. Mm-hmm. All right, so what is beer made of? Okay, we have water, malt, hops, and yeast. These are all our components to beer. We're going to get in kind of more how these work in these next few slides. So mashing, this is going to be our first step. Mashing is where you take water and your malted grains. So this is all like your cereal grains. Think of like barley and stuff like that. And you're going to be essentially getting that real hot. Think of like a grain tea. And extracting sugars from all of those grains. After mashing, you're going to be boiling and adding hops. So when you first make that mash, it's going to be extremely sweet because you're pulling all that sugar out of all that grain. It's going to be really, really sweet. What your hops are going to do is they're going to act like a bittering agent, right? So it's going to take away from some of that sweetness and balance out your what is going to be called a wort. After your boil, you have what's called a wort. This is like a non-alcoholic beer. So it would taste like beer, kinda, but it wouldn't have any alcohol content. Okay, chilling. So after you get done boiling, you have to bring down that wort, that unalcoholic beer. You have to bring that temperature down. According to homebrewing.org, chilling the wort quickly reduces the amount of protein in the final product for a cleaner, better looking beer. So it's really important we get that temperature down real quick. Okay, if you're like me the first time you do it, you can just throw that pot inside the sink, grab some bags around the pot and cool it down, and it's not really fast enough and you have a cloudy beer. But you can do it that way. And if you want to do more beer, you can get one of these immersion coolers, essentially just copper tubing. You can run cold water through it. It'll cool your beer down real quick. Okay, now the fun part. Ta-da! Fermentation. So Sarah knows. After you get done with what is now your wort, you have to transfer it to a fermentation vessel. So you have a couple different options like we talked about before. We have like a food grade bucket, You can use a glass carboy. You can see your airlock right there. So, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, fermentation is a chemical process by which molecules like glucose are broken down. Essentially what happens is you're going to pour your yeast in there. The yeast is going to eat all the sugars inside of that real sugary malty liquid. And it's going to turn that into CO2 and alcohol. The CO2 is going to get out, going to come out through that airlock, but that airlock's going to keep anything from coming back into there. So fermentation usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks, depending on what you're making. And it'll get real cloudy and it'll get real foamy through the process. So, yep. Okay. All right, bottling and kegging, bottling or kegging. After you get done with the fermentation, you have to get that beer into a container, so whether that be bottles or a keg. With bottling, a lot of people don't know, so after your fermentation is actually done, your yeast is in like a, not like a dead state, but it's like hibernating essentially. So we have to add sugar back into the fermentation, or back into the fermenter, and then put that into bottles. The yeast will then eat that sugar again and turn that into carbonation. So that's actually how that works with bottles. And then your kegs, that's just going to be a CO2 introduced into like a pony keg like this, and that's how you get your carbonation. So in conclusion, oh, congratulations, you've made beer. So in summary here and concluding, I just wanted to rehash on that making beer doesn't have to be hard. You don't need a lot of fancy equipment. You can use buckets and stock pots and whatever you have on hand. It's a great experience to have with friends and family and just people you love, and then you can give them beer after they're done. So it's a great thing. Awesome. Thank you guys.
Very good.
Thank you.
job. Now I want beer. Thanks.
Let's see if I can stop this thing.